So I'll make a motion to enter back into public session. And can I have a second? Mr. Carlo, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Good evening. Tonight's agenda will begin with our budget hearing for the Eastchester Fire District's 2020 operating budget. I would now ask our district treasurer, Jamie Hedstrom, to give an overview of the budget briefly and make any related remarks before opening up the floor to the public. So
Sure.
may I have a second to open up the public hearing?
Second.
Mr. Laurie, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Jamie, thank you.
Okay, so tonight I am presenting the 2020 proposed budget. The proposed budget was approved by the board at our meeting in September. So tonight specifically, it's open to the public for any comments that they might have, and pending any comments, the board has until November 4th to approve the budget. So just a recap from last month. We are proposing a 2.63% tax increase in the amount of $17,695,499.70. This does not exceed the tax cap. We have carryover available to us from last year. Some of the main drivers of the increases that we're looking at are related to our pension costs, which we expect to increase, as well as healthcare costs that are anticipated to increase approximately 5.5% for 2020. Also, the memo of agreement that was signed with the union for the next 5-year contract term, and just certain upgrades we're looking to do to department technology, software, looking at potentially a part-time attorney. Those have all been considered for the purposes of this year's budget. The one thing I would point out from last month's meeting to this month, the only change to the budget, which does not impact the overall tax levy, is that we broke out in more detail our overtime budget. This was something that the chief and the board had expressed some interest in. We did put some increases in this year to the overtime, but we wanted to start specifically tracking some of the types of overtime. And this specifically relates to having a training budget, so a dedicated overtime training budget, because we would like to build in training. And a lot of times when we look at the overtime budget, that's usually the first thing that loses out in the past when we've had significant overages on the overtime. So next year we're just looking to track it a little bit more closely and have a dedicated budget for that. So now you'll see there's a breakout between regular overtime, training overtime, and overtime related to the sick incentive that will take that's starting in 2020. Otherwise, that's just a general synopsis of the budget. We plan, for any capital improvements, we have money in reserve, and we plan to use reserve money as well as, any unreserved surplus we have. And that's pretty much it.
Great, thank you. So, again, thanks, Jamie, for all of your work, sitting down with each of the commissioners together and individually. It's a big job, and this is a fine budget, we believe, for the operating year of 2020. It's always difficult when you're looking to try and optimize the money that comes in from the public and reinvest that into the community, but we do have about 85% of our budget is generally employees and benefits and other related costs that we don't have a lot of ability to tweak. So the remaining 15 to 17% of the budget is usually where we look to try and trim some fat, reallocate some money into some other lines that we think we're going to be using in the coming year. I think we've done that for 2020, just as we've done for the last couple of years very well. Does anybody else have a comment before we open it up for the public? All right, there being none, is there any public comment for the budget?
I'll speak for the public now.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so allow me to read this resolution real quick. Whereas the Board of Fire Commissioners of the Eastchester Fire District and the Town of Eastchester must adopt a budget for 2020 and estimate its fund balances in preparation for the annual Fire District budget hearing, and did so in preparation of its budget hearing, and whereas the Board of Fire Commissioners of the Eastchester Fire District and the Town of Eastchester held the annual Fire District budget hearing with notice to the public on October 15, 2019, and whereas the Board of Fire Commissioners of the Eastchester Fire District and the Town of Eastchester has considered the proposed budget and comments received on the proposed budget on October 15th, 2019 at said budget hearing, and whereas the Board of Fire Commissioners of the Eastchester Fire District and the town of Eastchester has determined that the financial needs of the fire district and fire department for the fiscal year 2020 can be supported by a budget that would comply with the real property tax cap established pursuant to Section 3C of the General Municipal Law, as the proposed 2020 budget calls for a real property tax levy that will not exceed the real property tax cap. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Fire Commissioners of the Eastchester Fire District and the town of Eastchester hereby approves the final budget for the Eastchester Fire District for 2020 attached hereto and made a part of hereof in the amount of $18,272,456.32, which includes a tax levy of $17,695,499.70. With that, I would make a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Roach, thank you. Mr. Carlo?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Laurie?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
And I will be an aye as well. Thank you very much. I would now make a motion to adjourn the 2020 budget hearing, commence with the remainder of the public session. Could I have a second on that?
Second.
Mr. Roach, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, great. All right, we will move into the regular meeting business for tonight. Tonight's meeting was called to order at 7 p.m. and immediately moved into executive session until such time as we entered the public for our budget hearing. The first item will be the approval of minutes. The board has received and reviewed the minutes prepared by our secretary and will move to approve them. The minutes this month to be approved are those for the regular meeting of September 11, 2019, and the special meeting dated September 23rd, 2019. I'd like for a motion on that.
Second.
Mr. Laurie, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Item 6, treasurer's report.
Okay.
Thank you, Jamie.
Okay, so looking at the financials as of September 30th, 2019, they present a net budget surplus of approximately $778,000. We have certain expenses that are trending lower than expected. Our professional consultant fees, vehicle maintenance, which, we did get 3 new engines, so we did sort of anticipate that, but it is turning out the way we expected. Building repairs, our physician costs, and our workers' compensation. Additionally, our certs, which we always talk about, they're hard to estimate in a given year which ones are actually going to hit. So a lot of, we have a lot of budget left there because a lot of the certs we've been notified of have not been finalized yet for payment. And we did not, when we prepared our 2019 budget, we did not anticipate our interest earnings from Treasury Direct, which is obviously also contributing to the budget surplus. With that being said, there are certain line items that are over budget. These include outside services, subscriptions, and retroactive salary. However, the amounts of these overages at this point are not material. They don't have a significant impact on the budget, and I don't expect them to increase too much more. So I don't think it's necessary to do transfers at this time, but I'll continue to monitor it and see if it makes sense to do them in November or, just wait till we wrap up at the end of December. At year end, when we kind of wrap up and do all of our final budget transfers, it might just
Who are the
make sense.
retroactive salaries?
The retroactive has to do with, the chief got his retro this year. We've had small retros where some of our newer members, when they got their EMT certification, it dates back, so I have to go, I have to pay them retro. So very small amounts, it's not what you
And
would
that'll
typically.
continue in small amounts.
In
more.
small amounts, so that's why I think
Right.
rather than spend the time, it might just make sense to do it all wrapped together at year end. With respect to Treasury Direct, as of today, we have $8 million invested in the 4-week Treasury bills through Treasury Direct. The rates have been steadily decreasing. When we started, they were over 2%, and now they're more, as of October 9th, they were at 1.66. I think now they're up a little bit, maybe closer to 1.75, but they have decreased. It's still significantly more than what we were earning in JP Morgan, so it's still certainly a worthwhile exercise, but just so that we know. I've decreased it to 8 million. We had 12 million in there, and as obviously we go through the year and we have more expenses, we have had to decrease that a bit. I know there's discussion right now about if we're going to purchase a ladder truck and potentially have a prepayment. So in anticipation of that, I did lower it. Depending on where we find ourselves in the next month or so, we can always increase as we need to. But as we know, November and December is when a lot of our larger expenses hit, particularly the pension payment. We have another holiday pay, things like that. So, I'll continue to monitor, try to maximize what we have in Treasury Direct while also making sure we have enough operating in JP Morgan. Other items, earlier in the year, the board had approved having an appraisal done. This had been recommended by both our accountants and our auditors and our insurance company. That has been completed. It is available now. I will be sharing it, the board has access, and then I'm going to share it with our auditors and our insurance company so they have the information. And we also, as we mentioned in last year's audit, there is a little bit more focus on our capital assets. That's not something that the comptroller's office used to pay as much attention to, and now it is something that they want more data around. So the study is going to help us with that. And, now going forward, it'll be easier to track as we, have additions or dispose of vehicles or whatever it might be, so we have an accurate picture of our assets.
When you share that with the auditor and the insurance agents, could you include the commissioners so I
Absolutely.
can also look at it too?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
And then also, we had our GASB rollover study prepared. That's just something that's part of our annual audit. It's required for the other post-employment benefit portion of our audit. So the rollover is completed, and that will also be provided to our auditors. And then it was just the budget, so.
Okay, great.
That's
Thank
what
you
I
so
have.
much. All right, payment of bills. The board has reviewed this month's bills and warrants and makes a motion to pay them. The first set of warrants are dated September 23rd, 2019, and they total $213,376.19. The second set of warrants dated October 15th, 2019, total $278,390.90. And a credit card bill dated October 18th, 2019, totals $513.35, which brings our monthly total to $492,280.44. Would anyone care to make a motion?
Second.
Oh, Mr. Roach is going to make the motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Laurie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, great. Chief, your report.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Monthly activity report for September 2019. Total alarm activity is 297 alarms, 14 were fire-related, 154 EMS or rescue, and we gave mutual aid one time to the city of Mount Vernon. On this past Sunday, October 13th at 2:17 a.m., Captain Calvi and the members of Group 3 responded to a structure fire in a 3-story mixed-use building, apartment building with commercial occupancies on the ground floor. Despite their aggressive attack, containing it to one apartment, unfortunately one person was found in the apartment and did not survive. Our deepest condolences to the family. To date, our radio repair vendor, ESS, began the process of putting the last of the radio equipment in for the new radios for the tie lines. There was an issue when they were first installed between our dispatch frequency and our operations frequency, making it difficult to understand the dispatchers. There was a delay between the two frequencies, so when you were in the same room as there was two radios, it would be hard to understand what the dispatchers were saying. That should now be corrected as of this afternoon. We tested them, everything sounded good. They've had a couple calls, so I haven't heard any complaints, so hopefully that issue is now corrected. Last month you approved the relocation of the Chester Heights antenna. Our UHF radio antenna has now been removed from the attic where it was moved to temporarily during construction, and it's back outside to a new stanchion that was put up when they did the roof last year and put on a 16-foot mast, so it's much higher than it was before. So that should work out well, covering the parkway down in that area and covering Chester Heights part of town. And the portables that we ordered last month are on order and they should arrive later this month. Unfortunately, they arrived to the radio vendor and they had sent the wrong model, so they had to send them back, and hopefully we get them within a week or two. So we'll have the new portables later in October. Tim's been working on several projects. One of them was working with Ruscon. They had the ladder truck, ladder 17 and ladder 15, the spare ladder, had their aerial tests. Ladder 17 passed, ladder 15 did not pass. Ruscon is currently working on that issue and trying to get it to duplicate what happened during the test. It actually just would not operate. So the ladder testing personnel stopped the test. You know, he couldn't get the outriggers down, he couldn't get the PTO to work at all. As soon as Ruscon came, they checked it down where it was stored down in Bronxville. He had the same issue, he couldn't get it to operate, so they had one of the firefighters drive it up here, and then everything worked fine. So I guess they hit a bump and it got fixed. But we're keeping it out of service and unavailable for duty until Ruscon is able to diagnose that problem.
Which is hydraulic.
It could be transmission, the PTO runs off that. It could be an electrical, Ruscon seems to think it's an electrical issue,
Which
you
is
know.
why the bump reattached it.
Possibly, so they're working on it, but, you know, I'll get into ladder trucks in a few minutes.
All right.
So vehicle maintenance continues through the use of outside vendors. We put 2 surplus engines on auction. The auction is now complete. The 1992 Pierce Arrow received a final bid of $2,125, and the 2001 American LaFrance received a final bid of $4,150. Those were much lower than I anticipated, so I checked with a couple scrap yards to see if they were at least worth what scrap value was, and both yards said that the value of the steel and the aluminum that are in those rigs is very low right now, because they can't just like put it in the crusher because the different metals, they actually have to cut it up and separate the aluminum and the steel. The American LaFrance has an aluminum cab, so it's a lot of labor for them to do it, so they won't give more than $125 a ton, which would mean that scrap value of those 2 rigs is less than what we received for the bid. So I would recommend moving forward with, you know, getting them out of the back parking lot.
Great.
So that's the auction. Lisa's gonna need a direction. We have to respond to them, I think, within 48 hours or so. So maybe if the board could consider that. Fire prevention, October is fire prevention month. Captain Pinnaval has been busy with numerous schools, demonstrations, local schools. This time of year, all the high schools have their pep rallies and bonfires, so we've been busy trying to make those. So Captain Pinnaval, this is a very busy month for him. Every day he seems to be doing fire prevention activities at the local schools with the members. Currently, as last month, we have 2 members out on long-term absence. 1 member continues to work on restricted or light duty. And now the move forward with, have 3 proposals for the board. So the first one is I would ask the board to move forward with the approval to purchase a new Chiefs car, which I was directed to get back in May. I got proposals. The one that the 2020 Chevy Tahoe is on the Westchester County contract for $38,309.40. And the additional equipment, lights, sirens, cabinet in the back to put the accountability board in, would be $14,003.59. The labor is on the Westchester County contract, and the parts are on the Dutchess County contract. So all parts of the vehicle are on county contracts, Dutchess and Westchester. The grand total for the vehicle would be $52,312.99. I would ask the board to approve that. The second one, I was asked to get pricing for a new cascade system to replace the 31-year-old unit down in Tuckahoe, or a 29-year-old unit, I'm sorry. So I looked at several different ones, and I think the best one for us would be Bauer Uncas or Unicus 4 SCBA fill station. The cost is $57,049. It is on New York State contract, PC 66777. The price includes freight, delivery, installation, and training. The price excludes electrical work if necessary. So I would ask the board to consider moving forward on that as well. I had sent those proposals to the board earlier. And the final one is I had been asked to spec out a new aerial ladder truck to replace, to get ladder 15 to no longer be the spare, and ladder 16 would now become the new spare, and so we're looking to replace ladder 16, which is a 100-foot rear mount aerial. So I've spec'd out a new Pierce 107-foot rear mount aerial truck, and I had provided the proposal to the board, and the cost depends on whether you prepay. There's a $24,000 savings minus the $3,000 performance bond, or if you just decide to pay at the end, you lose that, $21,000 discount. So the final price is in the ballpark of $1,114,000, just rounding it off, and it'll go up or down by,
24 grand, or
20 grand, yeah, 21 grand, depending on if you prepay or not. So, and that's the end of my report for tonight.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Okay.
With that being said, I'm gonna open up the floor for discussion first about the aerial. So, as Chief Tween mentioned, he's been working for at least a year, right, trying to spec out the right.
Even
While
when
you
I
were
was
doing
looking at the
Pearson's
engines, I was looking at this new ladder truck
Right.
because it's a single axle in the rear, so it would give us much better maneuverability than the tandem axle rigs. And also the independent front suspension also gives it a greater, better turning radius. So ladder 16 covers the hills in Bronxville, which are extremely tight, and even the engines have trouble during the daytime when gardener's trucks and other vehicles or moving vans are parked up there. So the more maneuverable we can get these apparatus, with more and more people we have in town, I figure the better off they'll be.
Right.
So I've been looking at this rig since we've been looking at the engines 18 months ago. So,
And the tower ladder,
Yes.
17, is also about 15 years old, right?
those were both 2003.
2003.
But
so-
ladder 16 goes
16,
on about
so-
twice as many calls as ladder 17, the tower ladder. So it's,
It's in pretty
16.
good shape.
I don't know about that. When they did renovations at Station 5, the tower ladder was parked outside for 3 years. That's 3 winters when it was out and, getting rust and stuff like that. So it definitely showing its age, but I think that'll hold on, for another year or two. But we should consider replacing that in the next few years. But ladder 16, it's definitely, we would want to replace that one first.
Right. And your fourth engine, what year was it purchased?
2010, I believe, engine 29 is a 2010 KME.
Okay, so you figure it has another 5 or 6 years. and it'll be
Hopefully,
thought to be
yeah,
replaced.
yeah.
Because one thing I think that we might want to consider is, you're rightly concerned about having spare rigs in case one of the
Right,
active
right.
rigs goes down, you have a replacement rig on
Mm-hmm.
hand. But what about reserve rigs, where they're actually loaded for fire duty and ready to go? Because every time, I'm sure that you had that fire on 231st
Right,
Main
right,
Street,
right.
maybe a half dozen guys came in.
Sure.
And I think it would be nice if they knew to respond to a certain firehouse and had a rig already prepared for them to mount and respond on.
That would be our goal. I mean, there is some equipment that we probably would not duplicate, like the defibrillators,
Okay,
so.
right.
But for the most equipment for firefighting, like the air packs and stuff like that, we would definitely want to do that.
Of course, the tap
Yeah.
lines and
Absolutely.
rescue
Yep,
equipment.
yep.
Yeah. So that's something to think about, because we really don't have that available right now.
Right.
What we do have is spares, which are, if to put them in service, we actually have to spend an hour loading them up with equipment before they can do that. So,
The reserve rigs don't get the best, they get the hand-me-down. So when you put the
Well,
reserve truck in service, do you want the 20-year-old saw or do you want the 5-year-old saw? So that's why guys change over equipment. There is equipment on there,
Oh,
but
there
a lot
is.
of it is
I see.
older equipment that has been, hand-me-down to the reserve rig.
well, you would
So-
assume that the equipment is already at the scene if we're actually putting a reserve into service, right?
Sometimes we'll put it in to try to relieve the mutual aid company. So it may not go to the fire scene, it may be protecting the town, waiting for the next
Right.
call to come in.
No,
So that's why
I got
you don't
you.
want to give it the, you want to keep
So it
the
has
equipment on the reserve.
Well, that's something to certainly look at, and
Yep.
we want all our equipment on the reserve to be
Sure,
up to
yep,
snuff,
yep, we're
obviously.
working on that. Yep, absolutely.
So Chief, our last engines that we bought through Pierce,
Yes.
that were just put into service this spring, they were bought with the plan of prepaying,
Yes.
correct?
We saved about $90,000 by doing that because it was 3 engines,
Right.
so.
So in this case, there's an opportunity for us to potentially save 24?
21,000. Well, the
21,000.
discount would be 24,000 and a few $100, so, but
And then we would need the bond.
we would require a performance bond, which is like $3,400, so.
Right.
So why the drastic change in the prepay savings? Because like you said, we
Yeah.
bought 3 rigs at 1.8
Right.
and got a $90,000 discount. What is that, 5%? And now it's down to 2.2%. Why did the prepay, right now it's a wash. I think that from reading Nathan's email,
Right.
he basically said that the controller would prefer that we did not prepay, but they understand, and then as
Right,
soon as he
right.
said it, they said, but we understand sometimes they have a discount.
So-
I think at this point, the discount's not enough for us to consider prepaying.
They said it's based on the prime rate or the interest rate, so I would assume in the last 18 months, when we got the proposal, the interest rates have probably come down.
They changed, right, well, we
So-
know they've been changing.
Yeah.
So it-
I mean, again, I think it's a wash, it's no big deal, but since our council has said to us, basically, the controller has asked us not to do it
Mm-hmm.
unless the savings warrants it, to me, why not follow council's rule?
What do you think, Jamie, as our treasurer?
You know, it's $20,000. You know, we could, if we hold on to the money, we can keep it invested in Treasury Direct. It probably won't make that much, but it's not gonna make, it's not a significant difference.
And then, yeah.
You know, I don't know, I mean, we plan to expend it this year.
Correct.
You know, that was how we budgeted last year, we appropriated the funds for this year. Obviously, if there's a reason where that no longer makes sense, it's, that's explainable.
Will it be easier in those small
But-
Children, no, you have to
It's
have
sort
a
of- it's
second
like right
person.
on
No,
the-
I know that.
$5,000-$6,000, maybe?
That would be
Yeah.
no good in those little
Difference.
streets.
Yeah, essentially, I
think
mean,
it would be a problem
assuming,
with the
unless the
height of the
rates
tiller
Right,
cap.
TV.
tank,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
Don't
you're
have,
you're
like,
locked
an
into this
18-foot
2.2% discount, right? If you
firehouse
do it
to
right
back
now,
in.
that's
We're
what you
barely
know
gonna
you're
have enough
getting,
interest
whereas.
to
But
get
if the
our
rates go up in the
rate
next
back.
12, 10, 12
Yeah,
months,
so I don't
Exactly,
think-
they could go up, they could go down,
If
we
we
don't
had
know, but
12
even
firehouses,
that,
you
it doesn't
consider it.
seem,
No, because parts of the
it's
Bronx
not
still
that
use them.
material.
But they probably have bigger
Yeah.
openings for
So.
the doors.
Right, the difference is minimal.
Okay.
And all we're doing is reducing our risk substantially
Chief,
by not prepaying.
Nothing, no new ladder.
But the chief said that we prepaid the last time, and they addressed all his concerns. So to me, I was like, if we didn't give more money, they'd probably be more attentive to us. Apparently, that's not the cause.
They may have, the discount may have been based upon also the fact that we're buying 3 at once.
Yes, I believe that was part of.
Yeah, there was
Why
an
we
additional
got a higher-
$10,000 per rig for the multi-engine
Oh,
discount.
oh, I
Yeah,
see,
it's
right,
not just
right.
prepay.
Yeah,
So
we
the
were,
discount
we
was
had a better position, I think a better bargaining position when we were buying 3.
Yeah,
Alright.
the discount is based on 2.2% off the 1.14 million. And as Jamie said, the Treasury Direct will earn 1.6, so.
That's where it is right now.
It's really pretty
We don't-
close, it's 0.6% difference, a 1.14 million.
And I did mention to the chief, when we do take advantage of prepayment discounts on our workers' comp.
On
and
everything.
On our pension.
Right.
And those discounts are right around the same, about a 2% discount, and that's never, now, I mean, granted, it's a little bit different because we're paying for something we're not gonna have for a year, where those are just an early payment of an amount that's gonna be due in, 2 months,
Right.
so.
All right, so I
don't
guess we're
think-
pretty much in unison here. We're gonna pay it without the prepay, right? I presume that's where we're talking about.
What do you think,
right?
Paul?
I'm fine either way.
oh yeah, I'm not a fan of prepaying. But are you any more concerns with the recalls?
Well, no, actually, I think that was a positive, is that they addressed the issue and they fixed it. I didn't really research it anymore, but from my talk with the chief and from what I read there, it
Right,
looks like they
recall.
actually called in 800 trucks in a year, and it was probably just a little plug or whatever it was. It was an electric
It was a
defect.
software issue on a
Yeah,
controller
well-
that I don't even think they supplied. It was like a third-party controller that I believe that they, because it had a name, it wasn't a
Right.
Pierce name.
So
on
they
it.
were providing it as an
So-
accessory that certain people took advantage of as part of the.
Well, I guess it was part of the mechanism that rotated the turntable.
Yeah,
and
part of the
it
controller,
it
right,
falsely
right.
activated. What did you think of the factory when you were out there?
Very impressive, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's an
Very
established
good,
company.
yeah.
I think we're safe no matter which way we go.
Yeah.
So I don't have an
And
issue.
it's
I
a
would-
10-month turnaround about, right?
300 days, so yeah, 10
300
months.
days.
They anticipate from when we sign the contract. We'll
So
get it in
hopefully we'll
about
have a
10
new
months.
floor and.
Takes them about 8 months to build and then 2 months.
Well, are we gonna be
to-
ready at Chester Heights in 10
I
months?
just want to have a floor that we can store it, so it's not
Yeah,
sitting
I think
outside.
we will be. I mean, because they.
We could,
our
that's a
last meeting,
discussion
they
for
said
another
they're
time, let's
drawing
just buy
already.
it, but
They're
so
already
I would like to
drawing.
have 5 floors instead of 4.5 in 10 months. It's just-
And as far as I know, the members want the Chester Heights dormitory to remain in the rear of the apparatus floor?
Not necessarily, they can move upstairs, I mean,
Well, tell us now. Now's the time to tell us because right
well,
now
there's
they.
different proposals of, you're doing
I
the
would
whole
li-
house,
I'd
you
like
do
to
sections
buy
of the
the
house.
truck.
It all depends on what you, if your goal is to do the entire house, maybe think about moving it upstairs. But if your goal is to get the floor in as quickly as possible, then.
Leave it where it is, and then if we go upstairs, then you would
Yeah, it's just
consider
like,
that.
if you're, however you're handling the renovation.
Well, I only mention it because one of the additions, whatever we call that, added to services, basically stated dormitory, the HVAC system for the second floor dormitory.
Yeah, I think it was a typo. I think
Yeah,
they had
okay,
the- I
so-
think that the firehouse is
Okay,
confused.
good. So that
A lot
that'll
of
be
people
easily
from outside
resolved.
the area refer to Chester Heights also as a Bronxville
The
firehouse
Bronxville
because of the
firehouse,
postal
yeah.
code, the 10708
Oh, I
that
see.
they
Yeah,
have.
Bronx,
So
New York is the.
I
mailing
think that's
address.
just what it was. All right, so let me read this out loud and we'll move on here. Resolution authorizing the purchase of one Pierce fire apparatus from Firematic Supply Company, Inc., pursuant to the terms of Houston Galveston Area Council Contract FS 12-17 with unreserved surplus funds at a regular meeting of the Eastchester Fire District Board of Fire Commissioners at 255 Main Street, Eastchester, New York 10709 on the 15th day of October 2019. The following resolution was offered by, I will make that motion and look for a second.
Second.
Mr. Roach. Whereas the Board of Fire Commissioners of the Eastchester Fire District has determined that a true need exists for the acquisition of one Pierce fire apparatus from Firematic Supply Company, Inc., more specifically, one TA-03 Pierce Enforcer 4-door, full tilt, aluminum cab, aluminum body, single axle, 107-foot rear-mounted ladder. And whereas the Fire District has determined that such acquisitions constitutes a Type 2 action within the meaning of State Environmental Quality Review Act, or SECRA, and as such, no further environmental review of this action is required. And whereas Section 4 of the Procurement Policies and Procedures for the Eastchester Fire District authorizes the Fire District to make purchases pursuant to General Municipal Law 10316, commonly known as piggybacking. And whereas the Fire District has examined the HGAC contract number FS12-17 and its associated bid documents for said fire apparatus, and has determined that such contract was put out to bid and let in a manner consistent with the general municipal laws, competitive bidding requirements, and that such contract has been made available for use by other governmental entities, for example, piggybacking. Now therefore be it resolved that the Eastchester Fire District hereby authorizes the purchase of one TA-03 Pierce Enforcer 4-door, full tilt, aluminum cab, aluminum body, single axle, 107-foot rear-mounted ladder pursuant to the terms of HGAC contract number FS12-17 in an amount not to exceed $1,114,984,000 to be purchased with unreserved surplus funds, and be it further resolved that the chairman of the Board of Fire Commissioners or his designate is directed to execute and take all actions necessary to effect the purchase. So, Mr. Carlo. Vote.
I just, well, I'm sorry, before you vote, I just, are we rushing into this right now? Do we need to better vet the process? Are we sure we want to go this with Pierce? And I mean, are we good to go right now? I mean,
Been happy with the engines. I haven't heard, many complaints, any issues that we had, they've repaired, quickly. It's, mostly just moving, adjusting things, like adding a step here because there was a little bit too much of a step to get up on the hose bed. So, I believe the members have been happy with them, so,
And the process has been good, right?
yeah,
This
yeah.
consortium?
It proved itself the other night too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been busy
Is there
since
any-
we've
is there
gotten
any-
them, so.
there any reason to hold off another month or so to make this decision? Is there anything we need to speak with the lawyers about, or?
I think the
Yeah, I
lawyers
believe
have
they
provided
blessed
they've blessed it.
They've all blessed it.
They're the
Yeah.
ones who provided the resolution.
So we're good to go?
We're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, I asked them specifically to review the contract and to confirm that we could use HGAC again for this purchase and, right, and provide the resolutions, and they came back, they reviewed everything and said, you know, obviously they're not gonna review the specs, they don't know exactly what we need, but they were fine with the price and how it was, you know, laid out in the HGAC contract, and so I don't think there's anything else we needed from them.
Okay, great. All right. Mr. Carlo?
I'll say yes.
Okay. Mr. Roach?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Laurie?
Aye.
Okay, and I am an aye as well. Thank you very much. Okay, Cascade System. Motion to approve the purchase of one Bauer Unicus air compressor system and 4 Bauer ASME Cascade storage cylinders for a price of $62,049. In addition, to also approve a $5,000 credit to trade in our current air compressor, which brings the total cost of the district for this equipment to $57,049. This new system will be purchased from AAA Emergency Supply Company located at 635 North Broadway, White Plains, New York, 10603. I would ask for a motion for that.
Aye.
Mr. Laurie, and a second.
I'll second it.
Mr. Any discussion?
There's not gonna be really a substantial part of electrical work, all electric.
No, I
is
believe we
already
have,
there.
yeah, I believe we have the correct phase service coming in, because the current one, I think, has the same amount of, I think it's a 3-phase system, I think so. It would just be actually connecting, you know, however the feed goes into the machine. I would assume that the electricians just have to, you know, put in a new knife switch and connect it to the new equipment.
And you have
So-
men who you hire as electricians?
Yeah, we
Okay.
would use, you know, the
Perfect.
local electricians that we use.
All right, good.
All right, anybody else?
No, good.
No? Okay, I will poll the board. Mr. Carlo?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Laurie?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Thank you very much. Motion carries. Last one here, motion to approve the purchase of a new 2020 Chevy Tahoe to be utilized as the chief's vehicle for the Eastchester Fire District. Total cost of this purchase is $52,312.99 and is to be purchased
No, they,
from the Cruisers Division
White.
located at 420
That's what I
Mount
I thought you said, is it red?
No,
Mount
no,
Pleasant Avenue, Mamaroneck, New York, 10543. I'll make a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Roach, any discussion on this?
No, none
No?
for me.
All right. Mr. Carlo?
Aye.
All right. Mr. Laurie?
Aye.
Mr. Roach?
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so members of the board and Chief Tween had a meeting with UES engineers regarding the heating systems at both Chester Heights and Bronxville, as well as the roof at Bronxville. Would anybody care to make any additional comments right now? We're still awaiting some information from them to go through exactly what they're thinking with some of those changes, but if either you or the chief had anything to say about it, you know, we could do that, or we could tackle it in November. No?
Right.
Good?
Okay.
We're
yep,
good?
Yep.
All right.
I mean, I think we agree that we need a clarification on some of their additions, particularly the $25,000 addition for the roof, and whether we didn't already approve 10,000 towards that roof. And then, what was the other addition?
Well, I think
Oh,
the,
the
you know,
HVAC.
right, so we discussed the heating and air conditioning options at Bronxville, and then we talked to them about the boiler replacement at Chester Heights. They have provided an initial thought about what that cost would be, and we're not certain whether or not that's exactly in the purview of what we were thinking, so we're going to have our attorneys speak to them to make sure that what they're asking to add on isn't already included in the contract terms, to make sure we're not
Exactly.
overstepping or overlapping.
And I get, hopefully, in an effort to simplify, I think that the addition to the Bronxville heating system is accurate. That's exact, you know, we knew that we had one number to replace the boiler, we're gonna still do that. We asked them to adjust how they're applying the heating, so that seemed accurate to me, so we could exclude, I mean, unless someone else has a question about that. I'm more interested in them breaking down the additional charge of 25,000 for the Bronxville roof. I understand that 6,000 of it's for a dry well. I just don't understand where the other 19 is from.
Right.
Because even if I'm, and sometimes I convolute numbers, but I thought even in the email they had sent yet the day before, the number was more like 11,000 addition. Did you
Right.
recall,
Well,
Jamie?
their most recent, their earlier proposal from earlier there, I think was 12.5. And then later on this evening, they had provided some additional concerns about numbers. So I feel not getting all those numbers out there into the public, we're not even sure exactly what they're really asking for at this point. It's gonna be,
Right, okay.
you know, it's gonna be helpful.
Forgot.
But we definitely wanna make sure that we're only paying for the services that we need and we're not paying for services that we've already paid for. That's number one right now.
Yes,
But right now,
absolutely.
they still seem to be presenting themselves as an economical option, which is why we went with them, besides their abilities. So we're just hopeful that's gonna remain the same going forward. But they are making progress. They do believe that if we're able to get through the rest of the month and have this locked down, that they should have bid documents out by the end of November. We'll see.
Is it possible to approve the Bronxville heating system, since Commissioner Roche says he understands the increase on that? Because we explained to them that that was our concern. We don't want to
Right.
be tearing out the heating system in January or February because, you know, it's going to be pretty cold out. And so if we can, if it's possible, I don't know if the board is comfortable with it, approve the part of the contract dealing with the Bronxville heating system only, if the board's comfortable with it.
See, I think that's part of what's confusing, because we
Right.
had already approved the 8,500.
Right,
For the Bronxville boiler.
correct.
And then this 25,000 seems to include another $6,000 related to the Bronxville boiler.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if in that conversation there was additional,
The conversation that we had with them during our meeting didn't actually provide us with any real numbers, because they
Okay.
had to go back and figure it out. They've decided that today is the day they're going to send us the numbers,
Right.
so. But their roof replacement, where they speak about replacing the slate roof at Bronxville with the rubber slate roof that we have at Chester
Yes.
Heights, they're asking for an additional scope of work for $12,500. And then they mentioned that the stormwater dry well design, which I presume is also connected to Bronxville, because the
Yes.
roof and all those apparatus are done at Chester Heights, is another 6,500. So initially, our attorneys were saying, approve the 19,000. But then just before our meeting began, they sent clarification that actually increased that number.
yeah.
And I was under the impression that it was that 19,000. Now that they're saying that they want to exceed that amount, I think, what were we saying, 25,000? I think we were talking about, right, Jamie? It was a
Yeah, and
$25,000
And if you look at the $25,000 number, they're again referring, they broke it out in three parts: the roof, the stormwater dry well, and the boiler. They bring
Right.
it, and that's, so they
But our
bring that.
documents and our agreement was to include the boiler as part of it initially.
Right, the boiler for Bronxville, we
Right.
had just agreed to the 8,500.
Right, but
So
the
it wasn't
boiler
part
in
of the
Chester
original
Heights,
document.
right.
Yeah,
right.
but this is specifically saying it's for Bronxville, and that's what is confusing. That's what's confusing about the $25,000 number, is there's a $6,000 number built in related to the boiler for Bronxville.
Right, so I think it would
When you
behoove
read the
us
Email
to
chain.
not move forward
Okay.
with this
Yeah.
tonight and get that clarification, then if necessary, have a special meeting either before the end of the month or plan to knock this out at our November meeting, which we'll talk about next.
Okay.
And if we need to have a special meeting in order to push that along, I think we should be able to do that. It would be pretty simple to do. What do you guys think, right? Yeah, I'd rather, measure twice,
Okay.
cut once, rather than approve a certain amount, then have to go again and approve an additional amount after, or approve an amount that's too large, or what have you. So I'd rather do that. All right, so the next and last order of business that I have on the agenda is a resolution to approve the movement of our November meeting to Wednesday, November 20th at 7 p.m. Location to be determined. That will be solely based upon the availability of Bronxville Bronxville Village Hall. And if it's not available, we will most likely be meeting here as usual. So I would make a motion to move that meeting and ask for a second.
Second.
All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Local 916, anything?
thank you for the progress you're bringing to the district. We appreciate it. Hopefully the townspeople should also, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, Commissioner reports. Mr. Carlo.
Nothing right now.
All right. Mr. Roach.
I'm good.
All right, Mr. Laurie.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the board for the maintenance truck for the parade that we had in Harrison. We also received the trophy for the oldest engine.
There you go.
And
It's not one of the ones we
And that was
auctioned,
the
was it?
1929,
Does
wasn't
you
it?
want to win?
Yeah. Is that one of the ones we just auctioned off?
no. And the trophy's in the Tuckahoe Hose Company room. Tom Vishy was supposed to bring it here tonight, but I think Tommy got caught working late tonight, so, but the trophy's there. And I'm not sure if we won something for the Mamaroneck Parade, but I know the Harrison, we got a trophy. And believe it or not, we had some former residents living in Harrison. When they seen the Eastchester truck, they were yelling, "Thank God Eastchester's here." And then when they seen me driving along with the maintenance truck, they yelled Tuckahoe. I knew them, a lot of the people that were there. They moved out of Tuckahoe years ago and they moved to Harrison, but they were so happy to see Eastchester coming in the parade in Tuckahoe also. So thank you, Chief, for the maintenance truck, and we really appreciated it. And we were home, I think by 6 o'clock we were home. So we beat the rain and everything. So, and then one other regret I have, I saw it in the paper and I mentioned to the chief, one of our former firefighters, his wife passed away, Mrs. Allison. And I don't know any arrangements. All I saw in the paper that she's in the Bennett Funeral Home. I don't know what day it is. That's all it just said. So our regrets go to his family.
Okay. Chief, one thing before I get to my report, do you believe that we need to provide you with a formal motion in order to accept the auction?
Yeah, I believe, you know,
Yeah.
to get rid of the district property, you
Yeah, we should do
make a
that,
motion
right? So I would make a
to
motion.
accept those bids, or
So
if you're not
could you
happy
read
with them.
those bids out
Sure.
again, if you would?
Yeah.
Sorry to put you on the
That's
spot
okay.
like that.
The 1992 Pierce Arrow pumper received a final bid of $2,125. The 2001 American LaFrance pumper received a final bid of $4,150. And they were sold on auctionsinternational.com.
Did a department buy them or individuals buy them, Chief?
So they have like usernames, it's hard to tell,
Okay.
you know.
So
We'll get
that's,
that information from the auction company, because if it's another fire department, we don't have to remove the lights or anything.
Right.
But if it's not a fire department, they're actually responsible to remove all the emergency lights and
Before they
equipment
take it
before
off.
they take it, all the
All
striping.
right, so I would make a motion to approve the auction results of the 1992, was that Pierce Arrow?
Yes.
Right,
yeah.
for $2,125, and the second one was the American LaFrance.
Yep.
Of $4,150, which is a total of $6,275 to the district. I would make that motion to accept that money and
Second.
move forward. Mr. Laurie, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, as far as my report, thank you for the chief. This past weekend was the Columbus Day Carnival. Thank you to the chief for allowing the rig and the parade. Thank you to Local 916 for marching. Thank you everybody who came out. It was a really good time. So Paul Carlo there, so Mr. Roach, Mr. Laurie was there with the veterans moving the trolley. I feel like everybody was involved, so it was a really great weekend. The only, obviously, blemish on the weekend was that fire Saturday morning, right? And
It was early Sunday.
early Sunday
Yeah.
morning, excuse me. And it is very sad that we lost someone. The person who we did lose, Phil Siciliano, was somebody who I'd known for many, many years. He is a father of 3 daughters who I went to school with at Tuckahoe, and unfortunately he was predeceased by his wife and his middle daughter, Carolyn, who lost her fight to breast cancer at 39 years old several years ago. I know the town is very upset and deeply saddened to lose somebody who's lived in the town for as long as he has. I would definitely intend for tonight, when we adjourn our meeting, to adjourn that meeting in a moment of silence for both Phil Siciliano and Mrs. Allison, and obviously thank the firemen and everybody who went in there and did what they had to do to help get the rest of the people out, the public. I am understanding that a gentleman of Justin McConnell from the green room made the call and went into the building. He was actually a very good friend of Mr. Siciliano. I did not know that until today. and had been in that building many times, so he was familiar with the people who lived there.
He alerted a lot of people, from
Yeah.
what I heard, that they reported. He went in and banged on doors to wake people up and notify them, so he probably saved a lot of lives.
Right.
So.
And speaking to a good friend today, who is very involved in town, she did mention, and she put it very effectually, is that what firemen do every day is heroic and brave. But what you don't always see is somebody from the public who has no experience, who could otherwise drop a dime, make a phone call, and sit and wait for somebody to come and help, to take that. Whether we have concerns about their own personal safety, it is good to know that there are people in the world who will make that effort as the first step. So Justin obviously has the respect of the department. He notified everybody that he needed to, but the men and women of our department did what they had to do, and they saved a lot of lives, helped contain that fire, and helped put it out as quickly as they did, that nobody else was injured or harmed. And I know the family of Phil Siciliano is very grateful for what the department did to make sure that his neighbors did not suffer the kind of damage that they are currently going through. So thank you to everybody, the chief, for doing that. So that's wonderful to know that we're able to do that. That's why we have our fire department. That's why we work and we do what we do. Is there any public comments?
Well said, Stu.
Thank you.
I don't know if everybody knows, Paul's retirement party's in the firehouse here.
Yeah,
I
in
didn't know.
November.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just-
Anthony is obviously going.
He doesn't want to sit next to the band.
That's why I'm coming, and I'm glad that,
T-shirts are ordered.
We're counting down the days now. You know, it's almost like Paul Ranalone's retirement or Thanksgiving. You know, I don't know.
Yeah,
well, I'm sure I won't sit in no band anyway. My ears are a lot older than Paul's ears.
All right, well,
Enjoy, Paul.
thank you.
thank you for all of your service,
We
Paul.
look forward to seeing your
I'll be
presence
here
here.
next month.
We'll see you November 20th, I'm
My
sure.
birthday's
It's our
on that
meeting.
day.
Oh, right.
November
Oh, is it?
20th?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not. Okay.
What a nice place to spend your birthday.
Okay, so with that said, I would make a motion to adjourn an executive session after a moment of silence and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Roach, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you